Hello and welcome to the Jim Ruff Show. Today my guest is a special coincidental guest, William Bass. He's from Seattle. Actually, I met William at one of the Wisdom Council events at Salmon Bay Elementary School. And he had heard of the Wisdom Council before. He had even served on the Wisdom Council. But William is writing a book on We the People of Earth. And of course, I'm writing a book and talking about we the people all the time, so we had lots to talk about. Welcome to the Jim Ruff Show, William.
Thank you, Jim. I'm grateful to be on your show. And the working title of my book is currently We the People of Earth. We the People of Earth move from global empire to democratic world government. And people go, oh my God, world government, that's just too big, I can't handle that. The choice is, however, is not between reclaiming national sovereignty versus world government. World government is already happening. It's already happening, and it's not very democratic. There's insinuations of fascism, there's elements of dictatorship, a creeping dictatorship, cloaked in the flags of patriotism that's happening all, and you see it all around the world. And at the same time, there's this upwelling of unrest, there's this upwelling of people, groups of people from all around the planet in every country that are calling out for greater democracy, greater sense of community. And at the same time, we're having this convergence, this unique convergence of crises and affecting the whole planet right now. We have a truly unique junction in history right now, a global civilization. And in the past, whenever a civilization has been faced with calamity, it either collapses or it makes choices. And we have choices now. Will this world government be democratic or dictatorship? And so in my book, I'm currently stuck right now, Jim, on the vision is there. There's a lot of vision out there among many people, but I'm looking for a methodology, some technologies, a relationship, the pragmatic nuts and bolts. How can we effect change like this on such a dynamic scale at the local level, the regional level, the planetary level? And so I'm really intrigued about the Wisdom Council technology, the dynamic facilitation, and what's possible in having those applied toward this subject matter.
Yes, well, thank you. So you're pointing out the convergence of all the difficulties in our society, the crisis. Mm-hmm. You're saying that world government's actually happening, and you're saying that we need to make a choice about what kind of world government we're going to have.
Yes.
And what I would add to this conversation is that the we that makes this choice needs to be in place. In other words, if there was a we in place, mm-hmm. that could make that choice, mm-hmm. then we have a different kind of governance process. So anyway, so the Wisdom Council, I think, offers a lot in terms of creating that we and creating this new kind of governance, and it has the ability to create a tight structure of how to bring that into being.
I remember reading on the website you wrote something about an ongoing constitutional convention. And what did that mean? How would you describe an ongoing constitutional convention, and how could that be applied pragmatically to getting people together in different communities around the world to engage and at least contemplating what can we do here to face our common problems?
Well, it's what happened, I think, 200 years ago in the United States, is there was a real crisis that was happening in the society. Mm-hmm. People knew they didn't want to have a king. They knew that we needed a new governance structure, and they convened a conversation, really, that involved the stakeholders at the time, all the stakeholders at the time, and out of that conversation came a new design for a new structure. So there was a we the people, essentially, that someone facilitated. I think James Madison played a key role in it, and so that is what I think is being called for here, is the facilitating a different kind of conversation that is like a constitutional convention. Mm-hmm. It's like only this time It isn't like we put a bunch of elderly, respected white guys in a room. This time it's about how do all of us be a part of that conversation? Is there some way that the whole system could stop and be a part of that conversation, and all of us kind of visit together about what we want, what kind of system we want, what kind of values we want, what kind of vision we want? And that's the idea of the Wisdom Council.
Mm. And you see this process is ongoing?
Yes, absolutely. There's 12 features of the Wisdom Council, one of which is that it's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of the idea of the Wisdom Council is you randomly select from the population. It could be, this is the tough part, the global population.
Mm-hmm.
Randomly select some people. They meet for a week, say.
Mm-hmm.
They choose the issue. So they're random, they choose the issue, and they reach unanimous positions. And if they do that, that's a legitimate symbol of we the people of planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the key is that we want it to actually be we the people of planet Earth, and the way to get that is to have all of us somehow be connected into that process, so that we're paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's my understanding, Jim, that you have been involved with the Wisdom Council process not only in different parts of the United States but also in other countries, right? And so you have a sense of what's possible across languages, across cultural divides, as more and more human beings become aware that we are really all one people, one species on this one planet. But back to the local level, how would you suggest, what would be the next step in creating wisdom councils for people in many different communities to come together to, again, the bottom line is addressing these common problems that are challenging our global civilization, but starting on the local level. And how would that work?
well, to me, there's a very important confusion that people have, and that is that they think that the system is the sum of the parts.
Mm.
And it's not true. You can replace all the parts and you still have the same system. We can raise everybody's consciousness, we can educate everybody, we can do this and that. We can, if we change all the people, we haven't necessarily changed the system. And the same thing's true at the local level. If we fix all the local levels, we haven't really changed the system. There's a system in place that's alive, really. It's a system that embeds all of us. So all of us might be in agreement that we want to save the planet, but the system is carrying on, destroying the planet, and we're part of that system, and there's nothing we can really do about it until there's a we the people, that can change the system. And so so when we talk about the local, yes, we need to do it at the local level, yes, we need to do it at the regional level and the national level, but to actually have a global system change, we need to do it at the global level and the national levels.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my sense of it is making that happen. Now, how that can happen, I think a good illustration is we had a woman at my last seminar, which was in Frankfurt, and she was from England, and she wanted to do a Wisdom Council for England. Somehow she wanted to get that going.
Mm.
And of course, she's just one person, and how does she do that? Well, she happens to be a member of a very powerful women's network in England, and she was realizing that if that network could get behind this, it could really happen. It could happen fast, and they could have the resources to do it. And then she realized that the best way for them to get behind it and understand it and see the possibilities would be to do a Wisdom Council for the Women's Network.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the way it's going to go, is that somebody is going to have a vision, like for a national Wisdom Council, and find some strategic way to do it in a smaller scale that awakens a very powerful group of people to setting it in motion for a nation like England. There was also a woman there from Austria who is from the Ministry of Life, and she's supporting the Wisdom Councils that are beginning to get going in Austria. So that's another possibility, is possibly that there would be different communities that would have a Wisdom Council going in an area, and then it would be an obvious thing then to do one for the nation, and so I'm hoping that that is another trial possibility.
I love that title, the Ministry of Life, but back to the concept of this system, and if I understand you correctly, Jim, is that the system, which was created by human beings, by the way, and it perpetuated by the people in it. So just educating those people, waking them up, whatever you would like to call them, that's not going to address the issue because the system itself is so institutionalized, has a life of its own, it perpetuates itself. That's what you're saying? So you need to get in there and change the system.
Right.
And I'm curious, at a global level, there are so many different models of how we can create a democratic world government with all the changes that are happening, a global parliament, a world congress. There are different models. Where you see a wisdom council, an Earth Wisdom Council, for example, one wisdom council or many coexisting together with a global parliament or replacing a world congress. You have any thoughts on what that would look like?
Yeah, I think that that the World Council would arise from a Wisdom Council process. Whatever system happens, I don't think we need to worry about doing that first. Although I think it's okay that people are experimenting with that. But they're already now, the way the Wisdom Council is designed is that it just takes what's already there and works with it. So what's already there at this point in time is the UN and national governments and now if we could somehow convene, and this is really a big step, of course, to do it for the globally, because not everybody speaks the same language, for one thing. But if we could convene a global conversation that people began to give credence to, in other words, people began to pay attention to this global conversation. And the core piece of the Wisdom Council's why it works is that it isn't just any kind of conversation. It's a very special kind of conversation where we're trying to figure out what's best for everybody and where we reach unanimity. So we randomly select people, they choose the issue, and they reach unanimity. We can guarantee that. And when they speak, when that group speaks, with those three conditions, random, choosing the issue, unanimous, that is a legitimate symbol of we the people. Now, the difficulty comes in getting the rest of us to pay attention and to be interested and to be connected to that. And I mean, we know how to do that in certain world events that happens. If we could, if there was enough money or enough people, in media involved, or somehow that if there was enough urgency to get that to happen, it could happen. And we haven't changed anything. We haven't set up a world government. We haven't set up we haven't changed any national government. Everybody's still going on we haven't changed we the corporations that's currently in power. It's just, everything's the same. The only difference is that we all are now in a larger conversation and we're participating and we're deciding together what kind of world we want. And out of that deciding together could come lots of other things too. Could come decisions about how we might structure a world government. Maybe, maybe not. Or could these kinds of changes can just begin to start happening as I think a lot of the barriers would start to come down in how we think about the world population, for instance. I think a lot of the immigration issues would start to change.
I feel addressing issues on a global level is the only way to really resolve them. And issues like immigration become a moot point if we remove boundaries and barriers and we're all one planet under one democratic regime. And rather than being a social issue that antagonizes people and get people all up in arms and stirred up where they can't even listen to one another for what's possible. And you mentioned something earlier about outside of here, on the way over here, about a conversation for possibility. And what steps would you take in creating the public conversation and getting the word out with the Wisdom Council technology, for example, that would motivate people to participate and feel like they really have a voice to affect true change?
Well, I mean, what would be best is if there was some deciding of all of us to, yes, let's do this. If that could happen, that would be great. I don't know how that could happen. In the United States, it could happen if there was a constitutional amendment that said, let's do this Wisdom Council process as a way we, the people, can continue to gather and meet.
Right.
That would do it in the U.S. setting. But if there was, I think we're pretty much relying on a bootstrap effect, where the Wisdom Council gets started in some small fashion, but it says, it makes sense, it makes common sense, and the media plays it up, and national governments start to respond, and then there's another random selection, and so if there could just be this ability for the people to become involved in this international conversation of all of us, and I think a lot of it is going to happen that way. I mean, I think some group is going to establish this process. It's going to happen, maybe grow slower than we'd like, and then there's going to be some world crisis, and all of a sudden there's going to be a mechanism in place to respond that we can all be a part of, that we can all be wise together and make intelligent collective choices together. And I think after that, this is going to have a cachet that can't be removed. It's going to be all of it. It's going to be, of course, this is the way we want to make our collective choices.
Calling upon our collective wisdom. There's so many crises facing us right now. It's amazing that you think people just feel overwhelmed, that there's a sense of fatigue, the media fatigue, they're getting bombarded by there's incessant warfare, violence, hunger, poverty, global warming, climate change. There's so many different crises. Now it's the economy, people losing their jobs, losing their savings, their homes. How do people find the time to turn around and look at the big picture to change the system that perpetuates these crises? I mean, if human technology is causing global warming, if our economic policies are putting people out of work and leading to home foreclosures, how do we bring people back to changing the system through the Wisdom Council?
Well, I think people are discouraged. I think they think nothing can be done. And so they just say, okay, well, I'll just put it out of my mind and I'll just work on what I can do. And I think that it's up to a few of us to just set this conversation in motion and for that conversation to begin to bear fruit. The idea, I have a friend who talks about convening a better party. If you have a better party, people show up. And that's kind of what I'm suggesting here, is if we have a conversation that is real, and it's about what we really need to be talking about, and we begin to start seeing positive effects happen as a result of that conversation, everybody's invited to be a part of it. And so I think people will start showing up and start being interested, and I think the media will start being interested. I mean, we could do it, for instance, we could sneak it in, I think, into being as a reality TV show in a commercial setting. I mean, I think that is a way to do it. I think there's a number of different ways to do it. But I think I think what we'll do is just, once we get some money and we get some more experience, and I think like this example of Julie in England, where she's going to try it with this National Women's Network, very powerful group. If that can happen and we can get that experience under our belt, all of a sudden we've got this National Women's Network in England. That could be a very powerful group putting this together in England. And if England were to do it, other countries I don't think would be far behind, and I think it would be patently obvious that we need to do this at the local level and at the regional level and national level. I think it's patently obviously we need to do it at the global level. There has to be a we the people. These crises you talk about, it's a new world that we live in. We can't all be with our heads down working in our own little village. It isn't working that way anymore. These crises are caused because we're interconnected. If you in this village do something, it affects the next village, and it affects the world, in fact. People are sending me spam all the time that bug me, and they're in China or some crazy place. Not a crazy place, but they're somewhere that I don't know these people. And so we're all interconnected, and we've got to be interconnected in a way that's life-supporting. How do we do that? How is there a we that can choose to do that? Well, here is a way to do it. Here's a way to create that we. And it's a few of us that would create the we. I mean, a few of us would facilitate everybody to get involved in that we.
Mm-hmm. We really are interconnected. We have created truly one world civilization, just not united under one government. It's increasingly becoming that. And there are also, back to our earlier comment, you said, I feel sad sometimes when I faced with so many people giving up, so much despair and violence. Like, how can we realistically ever change anything? And at the same time, I'm inspired by what you were just saying about the English woman you met in Germany. And there's this hope that in fact, there's more than hope. Hope is just wishful thinking. We have choices. We have concrete choices, getting people into the conversation for what's possible, to make choices, to create choices, to make them up. Stop searching in the past. We're at a point in time now where we can create a new language, a new way of thinking. It takes a different perspective on looking at how we are. I mean, all you have to do is look at the picture of the Earth from the moon, the famous shot from the Apollo missions. Like, oh my goodness, there we are up there, one planet in the entire universe. It's our home. It's all we have right now. What can we do to make it a better place as we're in the midst of all these changes that we created? We have to take the responsibility. Our system, our civilization created this mess. How do we find a way out of it? And I'm just so intrigued about the Wisdom Council. That's where I'm stuck in my book. I'm looking for pragmatic nuts and bolts proposals to resolve these conflicts.
Well, that's what I think. That's what I think this offers, because people want to think that if I just work on myself, or if we just educate people, or if we raise people's consciousness, or if we get a critical mass of people with this level of consciousness, that things will change. And I don't think so. I don't think it works that way. I think that they're confusing the parts of the system and the system. That it's actually easier than that. It's easier than that, because the key piece is this word facilitate. In other words, when I facilitate a meeting, I raise the level of thinking of everybody in that meeting. The whole meeting now is thinking at a higher level than it would otherwise. And I have a very specific kind of thinking I want people to do, and that is I want them to be in this place of being authentic and seeking what's best for everybody. Mm-hmm. That quality of thinking is the kind of thinking we need to have on this planet, where all of us are trying to figure out what's best for everybody, and being creative doing it, and being respectful doing it. So if I can do that in a meeting, where I raise the level of thinking to that level for 10 or 12 people, what we need is a device that would raise the level of thinking of all of us. Of all of us. So that we're all thinking that way, and we're all working together as a system in that creative, collaborative way, forging a we the people, which is a different thing than all of us. It's a separate entity. Mm-hmm. And then we the people can change the system. All of us together can change the system. All of us together saying, yeah, this is what we need to do, can have any kind of system we want. So this is a way, this is a shortcut to how to get the kind of world we all want to live in.
Would you encapsulate for me, again, please, the three components that you say would make Wisdom Councils valid, workable, credible? I mean, random selection. What were the other two?
Random
please?
selection.
Random selection.
They choose the issue. See, this is not a deal where where somebody in authority says, here, we were going to get a random group of people together to think about immigration and report back to us. That's not what we're doing here. This is where they choose the issue. They're actually the ones in charge, this random selection. They're the ones saying, here's the topic that we think is important. And they reach unanimity, unanimous. Now that's a legitimate voice of we the people.
That last.
And then there's two more parts, actually. It needs to be ongoing, so that we get a new random group over time. And then it needs to be where the rest of us are somehow connected to this, where we're peering in and paying attention and then feeling a part of that conversation.
That unanimous voice was so amazing to me in my experience on the Wisdom Council. There were so many different opinions. We all considered ourselves progressive, but there are so many sharp, divisive opinions, yet we all came together and it's almost like a miracle, but it wasn't. We just came out with one unified voice of consensus. I just found that remarkable and amazing. And I love that. But who does the choosing? How do you choose randomly?
Totally random.
But who chooses?
We get a pool of people and we have a computer system pull out names and we beg them to come. That's the best.
Good.
In other words, it's just purely random. Because it doesn't, the point is we want to put people in a field of thinking where they're their best, where they're thinking at their best. And they like one another and they feel good and they're reaching these unanimous conclusions. So, and we can facilitate that in small groups using dynamic facilitation, and that's what the Wisdom Council is, a small group. But then the process, the Wisdom Council process, is set in motion to facilitate all of us.
And I love that. And it's a circle. It seems to work across cultures. And we're talking about 6 to 7 billion people on the planet. It's something that works for everyone, to bring people together worldwide to create a better future for all of us now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We're actually out of time, but I told you it would go fast. William Bass writing a book on We the People of Earth, and is an activist and author, and thank you very much for exploring this topic with me.
My pleasure. Thank you.